if something is so hard to do, you just break it down to very, very small tasks and elements. And then you get a lot of clarity about what needs to get done. And also the challenge seems to be much easier to solve because it's not that huge problem that you're trying to solve that literally no one solved before us. It's just a small problem. Yeah, you have now 100 small problems. When you break it down to smaller pieces, you say, okay, that's easy, that's hard, but I have an idea how to do that. And you just start. You don't really need to think that much. You just need to do. And you look back half a year and you said, oh, wow, I had an immense progress on something that as a challenge, I didn't even see how I can start.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Scraping Insights, a series of video interviews created by the Web Scraping Club. Today we have Or Lenchner, the CEO of Bright Data, but also a great proxy expert. Together we talk about the early days of Bright Data, how it became the leader in the scraping industry, and also why proxies are more and more important in today's scraping environment.
This interview is brought to you by databoutique.com, a marketplace for web data.
Hi Or, how are you? Thank you for being here at the Web Scraping Club.
I'm great. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for sharing with us some precious time. Really appreciate it. So for the few people who don't know you, would you mind to give us a brief introduction about yourself, your career at Bright Data and so on?
Sure. I'm Or Lenchner. I'm the CEO of Bright Data. In the past over 6 years now, but been with the company since 2015. So almost from the first day of the company. I am a product guy. This is what I love to do the most. This is what I love to do the most even today. It's just that the product changed a bit from the actual product to the company. I perceive the company as just a bigger and more complicated product. But eventually the principles are the same thing, at least in my view. I started my career building my own web-based products, doing a bunch of things. Some of them were cool and working, and I sold a few to buyers, and some of them were complete failure, which is even more important in the product management journey. Until I joined, as I said, to Bright Data in the early days, 2015-ish, and started working on what was back then the first ever residential proxy network. The two original founders invented that, and I kind of took over as the product person and grew quite fast with the company. So the company grew a lot very fast because it solved a major problem to so many companies around the world. So we had to grow the company, not just from the product side, but in every department, sales, marketing, support, you name it. So I kind of took over more and more stuff until I became the COO. And in 2018, I took over as CEO until this day.
Yes, such a brilliant career. So how was the company in the first days? I can't imagine. Now, Bright Data is such a big company today, but how it was in the early days? How many of you were them? What were the challenges, the struggles, the first victories in the early days?
I think it was very similar to today, just smaller, much smaller. So eventually when you build a product, you always have the same issues. Doesn't really matter what the company size or what the industry size is, right? So you identify a problem, you try to find the right solution, you do it in small scale. You see if it fails, you keep iterating until it succeeds. When it succeeds, you need to reach scale, and then you need to invest more resources. So it's all the same thing, but back then it was with one single product, which was the residential proxy. That was kind of completely new to the world, not just to us. So it was very, very interesting, and we learned a lot just by doing, because when something is completely new, you can't read about it, you can investigate about it, you can hardly even test it because you're not sure what the use cases are to test it. So that was, I think, a major roller coaster in the sense that you had to go really, really, really fast and just try as many things as possible to see what sticks and what's not, just to find the right directions and to constantly pivot, and also to have some, to learn from disappointed customers until you get only happy customers, and then you know that you found the right solution to that specific problem. And then we always realized, okay, that the problem is actually big. That's just one solution to the major problem of getting web data, but you can do it better, you can do it faster. Actually, the customers don't really want to do it. They just want the data, so you can build more products to give them more value. So, but it's always the same process. Doesn't matter if it's a 10 people team or 400 people team with multiple departments. It's always the same thing. And keeping that focus is something that I think we're doing really well back in the early days, but also today. So I think it's pretty similar, just bigger.
So you mentioned you started with residential proxies. What's the idea behind residential proxies? Because 10 years ago, web scraping, it was not so mainstream or popular. So what was the first use case of residential proxies? Do you have an idea that web scraping could become popular?
Yeah, so it was really unique back then, both from the innovation side and the technology side, which again, it was something that never existed before, but also from the business side. So it started, if I remember correctly, from the online travel industry. At least for us, these were the first companies that we started talking to, or actually they started talking to us. When they saw that there's something interesting going on, and it's not just the old school proxies based on different data centers around the world that are easy to block, but something is going on with Bright Data back then that is more interesting just in the performance side. It's working better. And then we realized that, okay, we're helping these companies' actual business. They're getting more data, they're generating more revenues, and their own customers are happy and happy to pay them more eventually. So it's not just the technology side, it was also the business impact. And combining them together, that was pretty fast understanding, I think, that this can be huge. So, web scraping has existed for probably 30 years before when we started doing that, but in very different ways. And when we saw that once the performance of the product is exceptionally high and the value is so immense, it was pretty clear for us in the early days that this is going to be huge, not just for us, but as an industry. Now, it took us, it wasn't always easy. Today, I think it's pretty obvious to even explain to someone what that means, because everyone are using some sort of a GPT or an LLM in their daily lives, and they kind of already understand. Okay, to have that magic going on, you need a lot of data. So that's easier to explain today. But talking 10 years back, 8 years back, if you didn't have the actual need as a customer, it wasn't that straightforward to explain what we're doing, why we're doing that, what's the value to the companies that are working with us, what's the value to the world. I think that that's kind of behind us today, which is really, really good for us, for the industry, and really for the world also, because access to public information is a good thing, period.
Yeah. You mentioned that there were some errors, some hard times, some good times. Of course, as every early day company, do you like to mention something that went wrong or better, that you imagined it could be a good feature or a good product, but in the later time, lately, it was not so good, and instead something that some victory you had in the early days that was opened to you to or confirmed to you that the road was good.
I think that our approach is very healthy in the sense that we always think that our ideas are bad and unexpected. So, yeah, we're experts in what we are doing, right? But when you have this new perception of a new feature or a product, you are almost never the customer, right? We are serving the customers. Yes, we also do the data collection ourselves, so we are some sort of a customer ourselves, but it's for a specific use case, just a general use case of collecting data. When you are a travel company, an e-commerce company, a bank, an AI company, whatever it is, you have a very, very specific need. Yes, you need that data from that website. That's kind of true for everyone, but you need it specifically to solve the specific problem that you have. We will never have that, right? Because we aren't all these companies. And that's true for almost every tech company that builds products. So our initial approach is always, okay, we have this amazing product idea, but let's take a few deep breaths. Let's sleep about it for a day or two and always be humble, remembering that maybe it's a really, really bad idea and we just don't fully understand the other side. And so when you do that, you always have that as the doubt in mind. You make sure to move very fast in very small iterations and actually never build the vision of the product. So then it's really easy not to have a major failure, but also not huge wins all at once, like in one night. So it really never working this way, at least not in Bright Data. So what we'll do is really from the early days until today is to start with a very simple MVP, call the customer, ask him if it's valuable and what's missing. The next day, adding an additional feature on top of that, and so on. And so after a few days of development with quick feedback loops from the actual market, usually you will get to the right solution, and usually you will realize that your initial idea was indeed bad. So it's not anywhere close to that amazing idea you had just a couple of weeks ago. So with that process, we actually see a lot of success across a very long time. Instead, huge victories that we had just because we were really, really smart, or also huge failures because we thought that we were really, really smart, but took all the wrong turns. But I think that, also on top of that, the first residential proxy network idea that was also during that same process I just described, there was like a day that we realized, oh, okay, this is big, it's gonna succeed, it's gonna work 100%, no question about it. Like you can reach that point when you launch new products, but usually it's not like, an overnight success.
That's an interesting approach. I will talk to my other co-founders, start implementing that because sometimes it happens.
It's always harder and harder to maintain this approach as the company is growing.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, because 10 years ago, I suppose, web scraping was not so popular, so it was hard to understand to your customers what you were building. But also, I suppose it was hard also for you to build the residential proxy network because I think it was hard to source the APIs you need to build the network. How was the sourcing of these IPs in those days?
It wasn't easy, and actually it's never easy if you want to do it in the right way, the fair way, the ethical way. And this was our approach since the first day of this concept. Obviously, even stronger approach that we have on that today as a much bigger company that's serving so many large customers. But I have to get back exactly to the same answer I gave you on the previous question. So if something is so hard to do, and it is, you just break it down to very, very small tasks and elements, and then you get a lot of clarity about what needs to get done. And also the challenge seems to be much easier to solve because it's not that huge problem that you're trying to solve that literally no one solved before us. It's just a small problem. Yeah, you have now 100 small problems, but you'll do, 3 a day. That's possible. And once you do these 3 a day, you'll actually be smarter every day. So the next 3 will be easier. And this is what we're doing also today. So we have this massive proxy network and so many partners and our own apps and happy users that are happy to opt in. And we're compliant on all of that. But we're looking, our goals are always getting harder to reach because we're growing as a company. We need to support more scale. We want to do it in a more efficient way. We want to do it in a faster way. We want the quality of the network to be always better. So it's not that we solve that and we can rest. It's always a fight. It's always a challenge in a positive way. I'm saying that. So again, that approach will always be a solution. I have this huge goal now. I have a very big vision specifically for the proxy network for the next few years, that if you just look at the vision, and I'm not going to reveal it here, then you say, okay, no way we can do that. When you break it down to smaller pieces, you say, okay, that's easy, that's hard, but I have an idea how to do that. And you just start. You don't really need to think that much. You just need to do, and you look back half a year and you said, oh, wow, I had an immense progress on something that as a challenge, I didn't even see how I can start.
Great. Then, starting from residential proxies, then you added to your offers ISP proxies, mobile proxies, data center, unblockers. So for the few people who will see the video and don't know what's the exact difference between these kind of proxies, do you mind talking about it for us? I know for you it's a silly question to ask, but there's a lot of confusion still nowadays in this area.
Obviously, happy to answer that. And again, I'll start with our approach. So our approach is always to give more value to the existing customers, and by doing that, also to be able to serve more customers. So we started with the residential proxy network, it was a completely new concept that we invented. That means that instead going through computer A to computer B through computer C, that's the proxy, that computer C, which is actually a computer, like a data center, a server somewhere. And this is how it worked before we started the residential proxy network. Then the concept was, okay, let's not do that. Let's just think about something completely new. And maybe we can utilize devices of real people that are opting into our network in order to get something in return and to route the traffic through their devices. They will be that computer C. So, and this is how we started, by thinking how we can serve the customers better. What do they need in order to connect more public data better, more efficient, without being blocked? So this is how we started with the residential proxy network. And this is also the main difference between this proxy type, the residential, to the old school, a lot of respect to that, but still old school data center proxies. They are located on a data center. This is what their name is, data center proxies. Now, the main difference between the two is not actually their location, it's their characteristics. So the data center proxy, super fast usually, in most cases also much cheaper, but very easy to identify unless you have very, very high web scraping skills, very easy to identify by the target website, thus very easy to block. The residential proxy can also be very fast, depends on the device, we obviously always optimize the network to be as fast as possible. Usually will be slightly more expensive than the data center proxy because it requires a lot of resources from the company to source. But the number one difference is that they are labeled and identified as residential IPs, which means harder to identify, thus harder to block by the target domain. And then we started adding more and more proxy types that also we, at least a few of them we invented. Mobile proxies, for example, these are residential proxies but coming from a mobile device, almost identical with everything. It's just that for some websites, seeing a mobile IP means something slightly different. So it can be sometimes easier to harder to identify. It really depends on the customer, the use case, the website, and so on. ISP proxies, so basically somewhere in between the residential and the data center. These proxies are hosted on a data center, so they are always on, very fast, but labeled as residential to some extent, sometimes more, sometimes less. I think that's covering the proxy side. Obviously, we don't want to get too long and too technical. Right.
Thank you so much for this primer on proxy on proxy networks. And then you added also the unblocker, which is a step forward in the anti-detection, in the anti-bot detection technique. First, I want to start the unblocker team with a question from our audience. Fabian is asking, do you think that web unblocker will eventually replace proxy networks?
Yes. And I'll explain why. Getting back again to our approach, which is constantly delivering more value to our customers. The reason that we came up with the web unblocker is the realization that, you know what, most of our customers don't want to scrape the web. They're just doing that as a means to get to their end goal, which is getting the data. We can probably, as a company that is doing that for a living, do it better for them and take more responsibility on ourselves in at least the hardest part in that equation, which is getting access to the public data, because many websites are trying to prevent access to public information. This is how we came up with the web unlocker. The logical thing is that to happen is that as long as the web unlocking tools gives you the value, you will use them, and you will not use the proxy networks because it means that you need to invest your own resources as a company in understanding the logic of the blocking scripts and how to overcome them. It's not your business. Your business usually is to be an e-commerce website, to be a travel website, to be a bank, to be an AI company. Let us do the rest. It's an analogy I like to use is you're starting a new online business. You are not going to build your own checkout system, right? You will integrate Stripe, whoever it is, doesn't matter, because you are not a payment company. You are doing whatever your idea is, and you just need to make transactions. So you will integrate someone else. This is why I think, and I also see the trends, actually, it's not only a thought, that once a company understands that they don't have to do that, and we can take more responsibility on the process, they are more than happy to use the web unlocker and let us do the heavy lifting.
Great. And I think there's a product mix between proxies and blockers brought to you, but your company, Bright Data, to reach, I've read somewhere, $100 million in annual recurring revenue. Is that correct, more or less? I've read somewhere.
We're bigger than that. That was a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So the article I've seen was not so updated. And
we're a private company, so we're not really sharing our numbers, but that was like a statement I gave a few years ago, so you can count on it. Obviously, time has passed and we keep growing.
Sure. And without giving the figures, more or less, is how these revenues are split between proxies and blockers, type of proxies. Do you see a shift in the unblocker usage instead of residential proxies or traditional proxies?
So we see a constant growth in the more advanced data collection products. So it's everything above proxies. It's a lot more than just the unblocker. It's the web unblocker. It's the data product suites that we have on top of that. It's the scraping browsers that we launched around the year and something ago. It's the bright insights that we launched above that. So all of this is growing fast, and the proxies are also growing because the total addressable market, the industry itself is growing. Proxies are growing slightly slower than all of the advanced data collection products because scraping became something that everyone understands that they have to do. So more customers that are entering this field for the first time will start with the advanced products. They don't want to learn the history of web scraping and how they need to write the code properly to integrate with the proxies without being locked. It's not their business. So we see that part growing faster than the other part, but the old school proxies are also growing. I think that probably true for the whole industry. I don't know, but I think it makes sense.
Great. Now, I imagine that because I've seen also talking with other people in the industry, our customers, that I think there is more and more need of web data, but not necessarily this means need to do web scraping. You want the data. You don't want to learn scraping.
And even more than that, we saw many customers and many companies that even getting the raw data is not their actual goal. Their actual goal is to get the insights from the data. This is why we launched Bright Insights a couple of years ago for the e-commerce industry. So eventually it's all about understanding what they really want. And if you can take part of the process and do it for them, they'll be more than happy. It's a win-win.
Another question about this shift in the market, always from Fabian. What are your thoughts on Zeit's decision to stop offering proxies and instead focusing solely on providing scraping infrastructure and unblocker API?
To be honest, I'm not aware of that decision or could not fully acquainted with their product offering. But I can react on the question, without even knowing that. It pretty aligns with what I said, that more companies need data. More new companies need data as well. If you can just give them the data, just give them the data. Now, you always have to have proxies as the underlying technology. You just can't get the data without that. It's not in large scale. So for us, I don't think it will ever be a decision to stop their business. I'm not sure about their decision. I do see that trend going on. As I said, in Bright Data, we see major growth there, but also good growth in the underlying proxy technology just because it's a necessity. You can't get one without the other.
Understood. And one last question about the unblocker. How does it change over time? I think that since the anti-bot solutions are evolving over and over every month, I would say there's a new release of any anti-bot solution. How is the work of research of R&D on unblockers? I think it's something that's very resource and time intensive.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I agree with the statement that every month you'll see a new blocking logic comes in, sometimes even from a new company you weren't aware of. I'll say a couple of things about that. First of all, I think that's natural for an industry, not just to our industry, to have two forces working against each other. What we're seeing is very interesting. We're seeing that it just shows the value of data. We're seeing the same CTO of a company using us in very large scale to collect data from the web and also trying to implement a blocking logic on his website to block others from using us to scrape his website. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, I don't fully get it because it's public data and no one can convince me that blocking access to public information has any positive impact on the world. But I mean, it's a technical feature that they decided to implement. It is what it is. For us, makes our job much more fun, I would say. I'll explain why. First of all, it's a different challenge that is very easy, very interesting for engineers to solve. We invested a lot in the last couple of years in increasing our research team. Not just talking about the R&D, I'm talking specifically about the research team. And we have quite a lot of researchers that cross the lines from the blocking companies that kind of realized that, no, it's not okay to block access to public data, and came working for us, understanding these logics and helping us to overcome them. Happy to say that we're doing it really, really well. And every time that we encounter a new blocking logic, it's a challenge to solve. It's good for the company. It's good for the research team that's always looking for new challenges. And it basically improves our whole infrastructure every time that we need to do that. I perceive it as a positive thing. It's also good for business, I would say, because, as I said, most of the companies that needs web data today, it's not, they're not scraping companies. They are those e-commerce, banks, travel, whatever it is. So they come to us because it's getting harder to unblock, but not for us. So we're happy to solve that, sell that solution.
Great. So you mentioned also companies that are trying to block scraping. And in the past year, Bright Data was on the news for some legal lawsuits that you both won against Meta and Twitter. So, how was preparing these lawsuits? How difficult it is? How challenging because they are megacorps and so on.
First of all, let's start from the end. We won twice. To the best of my knowledge, we are the only web data collection company in the world that its practices were scrutinized in court twice and basically approved by California judges, 2 different judges, that what we're doing is absolutely fine and we can keep doing that. So we are very, very, very proud in that. Even prouder in the fact that these are precedents that are helping the whole industry. I'm not just even talking about the web scraping industry, I'm talking about every company that needs data. Just think about a world that you can't get any web data public to train an AI model, to understand your competition and how they're pricing their products. I mean, how can that be a positive situation? It can't. So we are very proud on the end result. How it started, so as I said, I mean, everyone can try and block through technical means, and these companies are trying, but Bright Data is unblockable. So they tried to take it to court. I wouldn't say it was an easy decision because these are big companies with probably an endless resource of lawyers and money to invest in it, and we saw that was the case. But we knew that, we built the company in a way that we knew that what we're doing is absolutely the right way to do. Even in areas that weren't fully defined until this case, you understand that your healthy logic will be eventually the only logic. So when we actually care about not overloading the website and not doing scraping behind the login and interviewing the customers who wants to use us, and if you don't understand their use case, just tell them, sorry, we won't serve you, you can work with someone else. And doing all of these things for the last decade, obsessively, not taking any shortcuts, then you also have a lot of confidence that you will win in court, even against these giants, because you know that you are doing all the right things. Does it bear risks? Always. But we're here to be as big as possible for the long run. And, we're solving such a big problem to the world and doing it really successfully. So, me, management, the board, no one objected and everyone fully supported in this adventure. It was a big adventure, and eventually I was very, very happy, but not that concerned. I wasn't that concerned. And I really thought that we were going to win. Eventually, I was very happy to see that I was right.
Great. Yeah, I totally agree. And I recently have read many articles of companies like newspapers or authors that are publishing on the web some content and that are complaining about AI scraping data, copyrighted data mainly, and to integrate in their business without sharing revenues with the authors, and then offer solutions for a cost. So what do you think that these approaches about AI companies are damaging the reputation of the web scraping industry, or or they will lead to a more restrictive rules on web scraping?
I think that everything that we're seeing and reading is positive. Even if it's negative, it's positive because this industry has to evolve. And it's solving, again, such a big problem that is impacting so many people across the world. It has to be noisy. This is the way it is. It's so big that it has to make some noise. So the fact that it's happening is positive. Now, some things will take this direction, some things will take a different direction, and eventually it will stabilize. But the fact that we have, after a few years that we're in business and talking and doing these things, seeing it happening, everyone are talking about it, and regulators are regulating it, legislators are legislating it. This is a positive thing. That's the title. Now, if you have to define between collection of public data, which is what we're doing, and again, proved in court in California twice that we are doing it the right way. What is the right way? By the way, there are others that are not doing it the right way, and they have to stop. And there's a completely different thing, which is what is the content of the data, not if it's public or not. Many of the things that we're seeing and reading now relating to the AI companies that are collecting a lot of data to train their models is related to copyright. Copyright is a different story. You actually have very well-defined laws, copyright laws, almost in every jurisdiction around the world. Most of them has been around for like the past 100 years, when people started to ask, to enforce copyrights on books. I think that no actual issue there because things are defined. And now we're just a phase in time when technologies are moving very fast, that people are trying to check the edges, the boundaries, and maybe to adjust the laws that were true to the newspapers and books to these new technologies. It always happens when something new, such meaningful new technology comes to the world, it'll be okay. Eventually, there will be a few court cases, there will be a few regulations, the boundaries will get clearer, very similar to what was 5, 6, 7 years ago with GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, the definition of private information. It's not private information. It was a big mayhem, a lot of chaos. Yeah, some companies got hurt, some companies didn't, but eventually it's working, it's okay. No one, it belongs to the past. The same will happen here. We'll get better every day.
Great. One last question for today, always about AI and web scraping. It's almost a recurring question to every guest we have here. So from one side, I think that this AI boom on LLMs and so on, it's a very positive thing, as you said, because there is more and more demand for web data. On the other side, also there is maybe these LLMs can help in parsing HTML, so lowering the barrier for creating scrapers or help in creating more robust scrapers in the future. I suppose it's something you are already working on your products, or maybe you are trying to guess how to work with LLM in the creation of scrapers.
Of course. So before the AI explosion, we already started implemented our own models that we built in-house. Because honestly, parsing wasn't like the big problem to solve. Doing it automatically in large scale, that's something that is very cool to solve. Again, less from the innovation point of view, more than from the pure R&D and development and execution point of view. With that, AI helped a lot. So we had our own models that we developed, but today we're integrated with the bigger LLMs that are obviously doing it much better than us, that are doing it best in the world. So that's an enabler for us and for our customers. The better they are getting, the better for us. And it can help us to focus more on the problems that no one else could solve, which is the infrastructure products that we have, the proxy products, the unblockers products, the heavy infrastructure across the whole product suite, again, from the proxy to the insights, that requires a lot of actual innovation. Now, again, with the AI, that's an enabler. We implement it everywhere we can in the products, and we see the results. I wish them all the best.
Great. So thank you again for your time. It was really a pleasure to meet you. And I think this video will be very helpful for our community to know more about what's behind a brand like Bright Data and the proxy industry in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Keep doing the great work and content that you're producing at the Web Scraping Club. And everyone are more than happy to reach out over LinkedIn, Or Lenchner, happy to talk all the time. And if you need data, as long as it's public, you know where to sign.
Thank you so much.